The Louie T Network is powered by MusicHead University. MusicHeads, classes in session. Turn me up. Enroll on YouTube now. Link is in the description.
Who else could it be but me, your man, Louie T? Welcome to the Command Post live training camp confidential day number 2 for the Washington Commanders. I, of course, am your set man, Louie T. Thank you for joining me. You know what it is. Post up. Take command. Let's get into day number 2 of training camp for the Commanders. We heard from players Von Miller, who had the day off today, along with 2 other veterans who also got vet rest days. We'll talk about that here in a second. We heard from Brandon Coleman, who obviously is making the transition from left tackle to left guard this season. And he talked a lot about that transition, things he's worked on, getting comfortable, acclimated, etc. So we'll talk about that. And we heard from head coach Dan Quinn once again. So we'll talk about all those pressers a little bit later on in the show. We'll talk about practice and some young guys showing flashes. Rookies really showed out. Today was a super intense practice, as noted by a number of those in attendance. We'll talk about that in a second. But before we do that, let's get to, as we always do, a bit of house cleaning. So Scott Abraham and a number of other members of the media tweeted this out very early this morning. And we already knew this information. This was announced about maybe 3 weeks ago or so, maybe a month ago. But the actual award itself was presented to the Washington PR staff. They won the 2025 Rozelle Award. Pete Rozelle, for those of you who don't know, quick little background. Pete Rozelle, the most influential NFL commissioner, the guy that took the NFL from a ho-hum product and made it into a household juggernaut, essentially. He was the guy that kind of set the stage for Paul Tagliabue to come in here and take the NFL to the next level. And obviously Roger Goodell has made this thing a global sport now, and it's become the biggest entity in the United States of America by a wide margin, obviously. And so they give out this Pete Rozelle Award every year to the best PR staff in the NFL. This organization has never won it. That can no longer be said. That is no longer the case, as the Rozelle Award winners for 2025 was the Washington Commanders PR staff. So as you can see, everything's changing around here. From top to bottom, even the PR staff getting love now. It's amazing what can happen when you have adults in the building, right? When you run a proper, professionally run organization, it's felt top to bottom. And even the PR staff is getting some love now. So big congrats to them. The award was presented to them by Nikki Javala, and John Keim got up, spoke some really kind words about the staff and how they are always gracious with the time. They are always punctual. They keep an even keel despite the ups and downs of this organization in the past. These guys and gals, as you can see, have always done a phenomenal job of keeping the media informed, treating them with respect, and setting the stage for them to do their jobs at the highest level. So congrats to the Washington PR staff. And again, it's just another example of how bad things have been and how good things are now, and just the 180-degree change that we've seen in just a year's time, really. It's what probably was more of 2 years, in the making, or because the last year of Ron, our owner, Josh Harris, was there watching that whole season. He had just purchased the team, and he was kind of taking in all the inventory, and figuring out all the things that needed to change. And so it might have been maybe a year prior in the making, but you still had to bring in a guy like Adam Peters. You still had to bring in DQ. You still had to draft Jaden Daniels, and it still had to coalesce as fast as it did. And man, did it ever. And we're reaping the benefits. Like I've said many a times to you guys, what a time to be alive as a Commanders fan. It's only up from here, right? It's only up from here. So congratulations to the Washington PR staff. I talked about practice being very intense today. This is from our girl Seawall, Candy Waller, on X, who obviously covering the team for Bowie TV, was out at practice today as she was yesterday. And I heard this from several different sources today, different people posting on social media, different people, reaching out saying like today's practice was intense. And they said it didn't feel like day 2 of training camp. This felt like some November, week 9 intensity, right? Candy writes, Frankie Louvu is making my blood pressure go up, and this defensive line acting like they got a game on Sunday. What am I watching exactly? ? Clearly, am I the only one acting like it's just day 2? She wasn't alone in this, though, right? Like, she was just speaking her truth. This is why we love Candy, because she's like, what is this? Like, I'm not accustomed. And this is the difference between a Dan Quinn coach team and the Rivera teams and the Jay Gruden teams when it was Club J in training camp and practice wasn't really practice, which is why guys like DJ Swearinger would buck off and talk about how easy practices were here. This is nothing like those teams that failed to live up to expectations after having a successful season, or just failed to live up to expectations in general, whatever those expectations were. And clearly they had some impairments to their ability to do that. We know about that. But at the end of the day, this is not like it was before. You want to know why I'm confident that this team isn't going to have this regression, why this team isn't going to have this remarkable step backwards that a lot of people are projecting from us, or a lot of people want to try to straddle the fence like, oh man, they went to the championship game, I don't think they can be as successful, but then out of the other side of their mouth, but I still think this is a good team that's going to win 10 or 11 games. Well, you can't have it both ways, right? Either you think we're going to regress or you think we're going to be good. The reason why I think we're going to be good, one, we have Jaden Daniels, but two, we have Dan Quinn. We have a culture that has been established of excellence. We have a standard now, and this is a part of the standard. And I thought Dan Quinn had another wonderful answer to a question today that he had to think about. And it kind of speaks to this right here, the intensity that we saw or heard about, at least in day 2 of practice. So we'll get to that here in a bit. But let's talk about practice itself and a couple of tidbits and notes from practice today. Jaden Daniels, once again, rather sharp in practice. Again, that's really not something that I feel like I have to tell you every single day. We just expect that now. And what I don't want to do, however, is allow you to get to a place of complacency with Jaden where you just expect it and you don't give him his proper credit and due, right? Like, you can easily fall into the trap of, oh yeah, that's just Jaden, right? I used to say that all the time about Peyton Manning. I used to say it all the time about Aaron Rodgers and, some of the greats of the game, where I'm like, don't allow them being so great to cloud your judgment and not give them the just due that they deserve. So, I bring up Jaden every now and again when it is warranted, because it's still practice, but we expect that from him, right? He was good again today. So he was sharp and has been the first 2 days. I'm hearing that the ball is coming out even quicker than it did last year, which is a part of the process of him working on his footwork, which he talked about yesterday, and also the mental side of it, right? Seeing things, digesting it quicker, getting rid of the football. There was pressure on him today. It was intentional. They brought blitzes to try to attack him and to force him to adjust, and he did that today. So that was good to see from Jaden. But I thought today was more about the intensity, right? I heard this from a number of people, and there weren't a lot of mistakes. It was pretty clean because there were mistakes yesterday. For instance, Josh Connolly Jr. Had a false start with the second team offense yesterday. And again, it's the first day of training camp. You expect those type of mental mistakes in day 1, especially from a rookie. But there weren't as many of those mental, lapses today. Now, there was one very first play of 7-on-7, Jaden Daniels, another touchdown pass. We talked about him first play of 11-on-11 yesterday, touchdown pass to Deebo Samuel. Today, 7-on-7, first play, touchdown pass to Chris Moore. Marshawn Lattimore beaten on the play, but it appeared to be broken coverage, appeared to be some sort of miscommunication in the secondary. Again, a lot of moving parts, a lot of guys they're throwing out there to see what they can do. They weren't on the same page. Lattimore kind of passed him off to nobody, and Chris Moore was wide open. Jaden hit him for a touchdown. So, again, that's all a part of the growing pains of, working with new guys, getting everybody on the same page. This is what you want to have happen now and not when the games actually matter, right? So the young guys stepped up today, though. Like Trey Amos's name keeps getting brought up. And the reason I loved Trey Amos in the draft process is because of just how smooth he was. Quiet feet. He doesn't react to your first movement. A lot of guys, you want guys who work quietly at the cornerback position. What do I mean by that? Is you don't want a lot of hands down the field. One of the things that always struggled with Benjamin St. Juste with coming out of college, one was the ball production, two was he didn't have quiet hands. His hands were always noisy, always grabbing, always tugging, always hugging, always loving, right? And officials see that. And he didn't have, and you can have quiet hands that are active. Like you can grab around the waist, right? Benjamin St. Juste wants to grab you on your shoulder and he wants to grab you up around your face and places where it's easy for the official to spot hold it, right? The good corners they're gonna put their hands on you, right? 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30 yards down the field. Okay. But it's where you put your hands on that wide receiver. Trey Amos will come up, he'll jam you, and then he's just running with you. He doesn't need to touch you. He doesn't need to be all hands on and handsy with you. He's just smooth with it. The transition is smooth. Everything that he does just looks so controlled. It looks relaxed. And then when he does put his hands on you, it's in a place where I can get away with it. You know what I mean? And so he plays like a vet already. I've heard that from a number of people already. He's playing like a veteran as a rookie. Now, again, it's camp and, he's not going up against the best every single time, but he had a rep today against Deebo Samuel where he took away the slant and played it really well. And so forced Marcus Mariota to have to go elsewhere with the football and ultimately tuck it and run. And so these are the things you want to see from your young rookie. And he exudes confidence, this Trey Amos. And that's why I rated this the #1 cornerback group in the division, in the conference, and #4 overall in the league, because I think with Marshawn Lattimore being back to himself, which I think is going to happen this year, Trey Amos as a rookie coming in and having a, dare I say, Quinn Mitchell type impact on his defense. Except I think we're going to ask him to probably do a little bit more than the Eagles asked Quinn to do. But that's nor here nor there. Quinn was phenomenal for them. That's what I think he can be. He reminds me a lot of Quinn in terms of how he plays the position. Quiet hands, quiet feet, really tuned in and locked into the movements of the receiver, not overzealous, doesn't overplay, doesn't open up his hips too soon, doesn't, overcommit to the first movement of the receiver, trying to get him to turn his shoulders outside so he can go inside. He waits, he's patient. And then once that receiver declares where he's going, he's in his hip pocket, right? And so I think he can have an immediate impact on this defense. And the first 2 days have been, really good for Trey Amos. I'm expecting him to be phenomenal this season. Sticking with the young guys and the rookies having an impact early in camp. Today, Josh Connolly Jr. got the reps at right tackle with the #1 team. Now, also remember, today was a vet rest day for a number of veterans. Among those veterans that did not participate today, Von Miller, Laramie Tunzel, Noah Brown. So we talked about Noah Brown yesterday. They're going to take it slow with him. Don't want to rush him back. Remember, this is a guy coming back from a lacerated kidney. last year, and then had a little bit of a scare during the offseason. And so they're going to take it slow with him. So he was off today. Laramie Tunzel, vet rest day. And then, as I mentioned, Von Miller, who we will hear from and talk about what he had to say at his presser today. But so no Laramie Tunzel meant there was an opening at left tackle. So Andrew Wiley went over there, played left tackle, and Josh Connolly Jr. played right tackle. So he gets the nod today. Really held up, played well today at right tackle in his first team reps, his first of the summer, first of many to come. Head coach Dan Quinn talked about not putting too much stock into Andrew Wiley starting out camp at right tackle with the ones, which we all know. And this is the beauty of now having a year under our belts as fans watching this group work. We know how they conduct business. We know that they're not giving out starting positions to anybody. I talked about this yesterday. You're going to have to earn it as a rookie. Doesn't matter where you were drafted. They made Jaden Daniels, if they're going to make their number 2 overall pick star quarterback earn his starting spot last year, that falls in line and is expected of everyone else. So Brandon Coleman was going to start last year till he got injured. And I'm telling you the same thing for Josh Connolly Jr. That's the plan. As long as he shows signs of improvement and they're comfortable with where he is in his development, he's going to start at right tackle, which is pretty much what DQ said today. We'll talk about that when we get to that conversation. But Connolly looked good today. He's continuing to, really get comfortable. A lot of guys are like, he's asking all the right questions. Really sharp kid, locking in. Love to hear the things we're hearing about Josh Connolly, and he had a solid day today. Another rookie, this time of the undrafted variety, Ja'Cory Brooks. Talked about him yesterday. I said there are opportunities that exist for these receivers. I mentioned Chris Moore with the touchdown grab earlier in the practice. Ja'Cory Brooks is interesting because I'm not going to make too much of things that transpire, without the pads. I'll get more excited about Ja'Cory Brooks making plays with pads on, when guys are going to be more aggressive, when there's the threat of violence. I want to see then if we're still hearing about guys like Chris Moore and Ja'Cory Brooks. And I don't doubt that Chris Moore will still, this isn't his first rodeo. Chris Moore's played in this league. He's a wily veteran. He's 32 years old. I expect him to continue to do what he's done to survive in the league as long as he's done. But I want to see if Ja'Cory Brooks, one of the things he's worked on this offseason is separating, right? That's one of the knocks on him. He's not the fastest guy in the world. Separation wasn't always his thing at Louisville nor Alabama, but we do know he's super talented. That's how you get recruited to Alabama as a top 35 recruit. And so there's talent there. He's showcasing a bit of that. Now when the pads come on and guys are going to be uber aggressive with you, putting their hands on you, can you still separate? He's been doing a solid job of that. He was solid again today, had a touchdown catch from Jaden Daniels in 7-on-7. So he's continuing to stack good days on top of each other. Told you he had a touchdown yesterday from Jaden Daniels, caught another one today. So he's continuing to stack really good days on top of each other. The question is, again, these first 2 practices, just helmets. Tomorrow, they put the shells on, so maybe the aggression steps up another level, right? Next 2 days will be shells, and then after that, pads go on. And at that moment and at that point, I'm going to be really intrigued to see what's going down inside the trenches, D-line, O-line. That becomes big. Running backs now become something that we talk about a lot more, because now the run game becomes a real fixture when the pads go on. So we'll start to hear more about Bill and his progressions, what some of the other guys are looking like. And then we can start talking about some of these receivers, because now the threat of violence exists. Now you going over the middle, there could be a penalty for that. You trying to catch, now that guy coming over the top is looking to hit you. Will these guys still be making the plays that they're making now? When the pads go on, will be very interesting to see how all of that transpires. But another good day from Ja'Cory Brooks, an undrafted rookie looking to make a mark. I've talked about Terry McLaurin being out and how that's going to give guys an opportunity. No Noah Brown today, as I mentioned. They're going to take it slow with him anyway. So no Noah Brown, no Terry McLaurin. That's your number 1 and your number 3 wide receiver. there are opportunities for guys who are looking to make an impact and try to make their way onto this roster. You're getting opportunities. Make the most of it. And I got to say, in these first 2 days, Ja'Cory Brooks has been doing exactly that. All right. Jalen Lane was very, very explosive today in simulated return situations. They didn't actually do special teams drills, but they did simulated return drills. And he looked very, very explosive in those. I really think he's going to be a huge asset to this team. And again, not just on special teams. I think there's going to be a package that Cliff will have where they try to get him involved, get him touches. There were so many opportunities I thought that we left on the table last year with wide receiver screens and jet sweeps just because we didn't have guys that were great at it. Again, if De'Ami Brown is your best wide receiver screen guy, you've got a problem, right? That was our reality last year, is that the best guy we could get it to in a wide receiver screen situation was De'Ami Brown. De'Ami Brown also fumbled multiple times in wide receiver screen situations last year, right? He was not a reliable guy to throw it to in those situations and know that he wasn't going to cough the football up. He did it in the NFC Championship game. He did it against the Cleveland Browns. I think he did it against the Eagles, if I'm not mistaken, in the second game. So that's something that he struggled with, but he also was dynamic with the ball in his hands at times. You can take that up a few notches with Jalen Lane. It's a different level of explosiveness. And I think that there's a chance that he could not only impact this team on special teams, I also think he could impact this team as an offensive weapon. So it was good to hear that he was explosive today as well. As I mentioned, it was a very intense practice. The defensive line and the edge rushers were really getting after it. I talked about them blitzing Jaden Daniels and being intentional with coming after him to see how he would respond to that. But the drills were really intense. We saw clips of it online, and it's fun seeing those guys fly around. And I talked about the Candy Waller tweet. I've mentioned other people saying the same thing, that this was a pretty intense practice for day number 2. And, you're starting to see different combos. Yesterday, I raved about the potential of a Frankie Louvu and, Von Miller on the edge, coupled with Dorrance Armstrong and Daron Payne inside on a pass rush, situation as a collective group. There's so many ways. This is the beauty of having depth. We don't know how these are going to play out, but any pass rush package with Von Miller on the field, coupled with Dorrance Armstrong inside, is going to make my heart smile. Okay. We don't know what Jacob Martin is going to be. Again, he could be this year's version of Dante Fowler Jr. for all we know. Or it could just be Von Miller being that. I really don't care where the sacks come from. We just want them, right? But if Jacob Martin makes this team, he's got to make the team first and foremost. He makes this team, and he's dynamic, and we'll get to see him in the preseason and see what he brings to the table. We've watched Jacob Martin. I've watched Jacob Martin in the past. I know what he is. He's very athletically gifted. He's got tremendous movement skills. He just hasn't been able to unlock, for whatever reason, the talent that he has and transform it into production. Maybe that happens here, right? We seem to have a way about us of extracting the most out of players, even if it seems like their best is already behind them. So who knows? But don't forget about Johnny Newton. He was drafted as high as he was based off of his ability to be able to rush the quarterback. That's supposed to be where he is supposed to be able to shine. Maybe this is the year that it finally comes together for him in year number 2. So I just like the fact that we have these different, packages that we can put together, these different looks, different guys we can put on the field. And this should be a lot of fun watching these guys kind of come together all summer long into the preseason and ultimately into the regular season. So another really solid start practice to start training camp, day 2 in the books. Let's talk about now. Let's talk about what was said at the podium today. So we start with head coach Dan Quinn, as we did yesterday. His press conference was just a bit over 16 minutes. Talked about a number of different topics. Started off his presser with his opening statement, which was about what he was looking for yesterday in practice. And he said he really was eyeballing the veterans on this team, the new vets, the guys that they just brought in. And he listed them all off, right, with no hesitation. The guys that he brought up, he said Goldman, LT. Anytime you hear him say LT, he's talking about Laramie Tunsil. Vaughn, Will Harris, Debo, JK. Anytime you hear him say JK, he's talking about Javon Kinlaw. Wise and Jones. All right, Jones, Jonathan Jones, cornerback. So he said he wanted to see how they assimilated themselves to the roster, to the locker room, on the field, the connections that they were making, how they fit into the roles that they're going to be asked to play and fill this season. And he said he was really impressed with how the veterans were coming in and acclimating themselves to this culture that they have established, right? You know, and we're going to talk more about culture today because DQ, I thought his best answer was a culture question that he gave a tremendous answer on a little bit later on in the press conference. He was asked about what he's seen on film with Von Miller. And he talked about still seeing the juice off the edge, the burst, the ability to win. He's like, there's just certain things that you look for as a defensive-minded coach when you're looking at a pass rusher. There's certain things. And remember, Dan Quinn started out his career as a D-line coach. So, again, he knows certain things that he's looking for. Again, it's Von Miller. So you don't have to look very hard to see the things that you want to see to make you feel like he can still do it. He showcased some of that already in the very short period of time that he's been here. A lot of people have walked away impressed. DQ being one of them, said the tape spoke for itself. Seeing him in person this year, they feel the energy, they feel the juice, they see the speed, they feel the ability to get off the edge. He still got it, right? He then talked about handling the vets. We talked about the vets, you know, a few of them having vet rest days. And, you know, it's funny because there's different ways to, you know, go about it. Bobby Wagner kind of outlined this yesterday. Like, some guys want less, you know, on their plates as they get older. Some guys are like, nah, give me everything that you can give me. I need the work. I need the reps. I need my body to adjust to, you know, being out here. And so when you hear vet rest day, you're thinking, okay, Zach Ertz is going to be among them. Bobby Wagner is going to be among them. No. And so he talked about managing some of these veterans, you know, wanting to take it slow with certain guys, i.e., you know, Noah Brown coming off of his situation. Obviously, Laramie Tunsil, wanting to make sure he's good, right? Keep him in tip-top shape. That's one of their prized possessions of the offseason. And then, you know, as I mentioned, Von Miller, you just got him. He didn't have a full offseason, wasn't here for any of it. Von even talked about being away from football for 4 months and how tough that can be to just jump back in. Not necessarily tough from a mental standpoint, but from a physical standpoint. So don't want to have any soft tissue injuries or anything of the sort because the guy just jumps in and goes at. Because as DQ has outlined, we don't go for very long in practice. You know, but we go very hard. And today was an intense practice. And so if you're going intense, and a guy hasn't been around and hasn't been working, you know, in this environment for very long, you don't really want to put him in that environment and just throw him into the deep end. So he talked about handling the vets. He talked about the importance of continuity around Jaden. You know, the question was posed as, you know, how important is it to have Cliff back with Jaden for year 2? And he said, it's not just Cliff, it's Tavita. It's David Blau. It's Brian Johnson. He mentioned all the guys that were former quarterbacks. Remember, one of the things that DQ brought up last year, and I thought it was a really, really interesting perspective that I didn't even think about, was just how many quarterbacks they've surrounded with, former quarterbacks. And it doesn't matter what level, right? These guys have all played quarterback at a high level at some you know, point. You know, Brian Johnson, high-level quarterback in college at the University of Florida. David Blau made it all the way to the NFL and had a, you know, very solid backup career in the NFL, right? You had Tavita Pritchard play quarterback at Stanford, right? For David Shaw, right? So, and obviously Cliff Kingsbury played quarterback, made it to the NFL, played in New England with Tom Brady, very briefly, but nonetheless. And then obviously has coached a number of different quarterbacks. So you got all these former quarterbacks around him, and keeping them all around him, having that continuity for year 2 is massive for a guy like Jaden Daniels. And DQ said it's not just Cliff, even though that's a big deal. It's having all those guys around, and it's also having Jaden putting in the work that you guys don't see. And he always talks about the work that we don't see, the showing up early, 5:30 in the morning, putting in the work, watching the film, doing the VR training, and all of those things that keep him sharp, that keep him ahead of the game. He said that's why we feel so good about Jaden, in year 2, but just Jaden overall as a guy and a player. He talked about the collaboration with the staff, kind of adding on more things and tweaking some of the things that they did really well, subtracting the things that maybe they didn't do as well last year, that maybe he said the juice wasn't worth the squeeze. He talked about his relationship with Adam Peters in terms of adding players onto the roster, guys that necessarily that fit the culture that is being, that has been built, and the relationship that they have. So it was a really good conversation there. He talked about Von Miller's quickness being just as good as it's been, over the last 5 years or so. He still got the twitchiness. Is he the same Von Miller from, his prime years? No. But is he still a good enough player? And again, I've said this before, 70% of Von Miller is better than 100% of most of the pass rushers in the league. Again, most guys that are playing at their best at 100% aren't going to be future Hall of Famers. Okay. Von Miller at 70% is still better than most pass rushers at 100. So we feel really good about Von, and DQ does as well. This was the best answer from DQ of the day. He was asked a pretty interesting question. I don't remember who asked it, but the difference between building a culture and sustaining a culture. And DQ said, and anytime DQ goes, either he'll say, good question, or he'll go, and he'll stop and pause. And he paused for about a good 5 seconds. And he started to talk. And he said, I think people get culture confused with environment. And I said that it was almost one of those, total mind blow situations where it like unlocked a whole different part of my brain or something when he said it. Because, we talk about culture all the time. And I don't know if we ever actually define what culture is in the sense of how it impacts the day-to-day or overall. But he said people confuse culture with environment. Culture is what you do on a day-to-day basis. He said we're good people, we're high energy, we do things a certain way. It's not for everybody. We go hard in the meeting rooms, we go hard on the field. Like, that's culture, doing that every day. And he said, consistency breeds culture. But he said what you create overall is an environment. And when you think about, and I always talk about sports being a microcosm of real life, that's nature. We talk about environment, right? And being a product of your environment. Well, culture is what creates that environment, and you create a bubble. I talk about us creating an environment, an ecosystem, if you will. Like, we have our own world. When you're here on the LouieTeeNetwork, there's certain lingo, there's certain things that we just do that we understand. Other people come in, I use the phrase PDSD, and I had people in the comment section trying to correct me. They're not a part of our ecosystem. They don't know that lingo. They just jump in here, they hear some shit, and they're trying to correct me. No, you don't correct me because you just don't know how we do things here, right? And that's pretty much what DQ is saying. Like, we have an environment we've created here. There's a way we do things. And we doing that every day is culture. That's what culture is. Creating that standard. Now, the standard that has to be upheld and what it is, that's the environment. So I thought that was a tremendous answer, and it is, again, it's just an expansive way of looking at culture and how you sustain it. He said you sustain it just by doing it every day, reinforcing the things, not allowing the littlest thing to get away. He's like, you know, I reinforce good behavior, but I also make sure that I acknowledge when it's not where it needs to be, and I acknowledge when it is, and I show clips of that. Because like it's the same thing with, you know, when you're rearing a child, you don't want to always bring something up when it's negative. You also want to give them credit when they do something good, right? So DQ just gets it. Again, it's another reason why I just don't see how this outfit doesn't win multiple Super Bowls with the quarterback we have and the leadership. I just don't see how it doesn't translate into wins on the field in a major way. He talked about Josh Connolly Jr. and Wiley rotating, you know, at right tackle, and he said, don't put a lot of stock into it. Basically, he said, we did this with Jaden last year. We did this with Brandon Coleman last year. It's what we do. We're going to put guys in positions. And today was interesting because there was a lot of movement on the offensive line. As I mentioned, Wiley went over to left tackle. Connolly was at right tackle with the starting group. And the three interior guys remain the same. Coleman at left guard, Biotish at center, and Allegretti at guard, right guard. So at the end of the day, they're going to force Josh Connolly to put the work in to show them that he is ready for the challenge of being the starting right tackle and protecting number 5. My thought process is those first few days of padded practices will go a long way in them feeling comfortable to make the switch, because really the ideal situation is for them to put him in that situation going into the joint practices with the ones. And again, it doesn't have to be concrete where he's getting all the reps, but they want him to take the vast majority of the reps in those joint practices with the ones to see how he does against New England's best, right? So that's when we'll really start to see if he's doing the things that he needed to do, right? So this was another interesting DQ soundbite from today. Being a line of scrimmage team, he said that, so the question was posed by David Aldridge. Did you intentionally go out and fortify both lines because you have to block Carter and what's the other defensive tackle for the Eagles from Georgia? But the two Georgia boys in Philadelphia, you got to block the defensive tackle for the Giants, who just got a pay raise today. And you got to block Micah Parsons in Dallas, among others. They have other guys that are pretty good over there as well. And he's like, it wasn't necessarily a focus on the division. That might be a byproduct of it, but he's like, we want to be a trenches team. Like, we want to be a line of scrimmage team, both sides. And that was intentionally done. There was an emphasis put on getting better in the trenches this offseason. Duh. Like, they don't just talk about it, they live it. And they literally said, we got to be better in the trenches. They said that at the end of the season last year. You know, we got to get better. And they put their money where their mouth was, and they went out and they got guys like Javon Kinlaw and Eddie Goldman. And they went out and got Josh Connolly Jr. and Laramie Tunzel. And they went out and got depth and fortified positions on the offensive line and brought guys in here to create competition. We don't know, you know, how everything is going to go. But what we do know is the offensive line and its depth. First of all, the starting, you know, capabilities of this offensive line and the depth behind it It's light years better than it was last year. Same could be said for the defensive line. How much better is the D-line? We'll find out. But they're a much stouter group with the additions of Dietrich Wise and Eddie Goldman and Javon Kinlaw. Like, they're a much stouter group up front. That's not debatable. So the question now becomes, how much better are they? But there was an emphasis put on that, and DQ was like, that's who we want to be. We want to be a line of scrimmage team. And if you are good on both sides of the line of scrimmage, you got a chance to be a really good team every year. Then there was a clarification. Yes, Dexter Lawrence. Thank you, guys. Dexter Lawrence for the Giants. A clarification on the Sam Cosmi update from yesterday. I went nuts with that, and I'm still going to go nuts with it because he didn't say anything really different today. He just made sure he said very clearly, I don't know if he's going to be ready or not. I do want to make one clarification, an error on my part yesterday, because I continue to say this, and I have to make sure that I'm careful with this because I don't want to put out there misinformation. So yesterday, I said that if Cosmi is on the PUP list to start the season, he's got to miss the first 6 games. That is not true. They changed that the COVID year when they changed all of the rules for the practice squad, and they relaxed the how many guys you can have on it. Veterans, it used to be you could only have had certain amount of NFL service to be on the practice squad, and they also changed the IR rules right around that same time, like the short term, the long term IR. That thing kind of came into play, and they also changed the amount of time that you have to miss if you start the season on the PUP list. It used to be 6 weeks. It is no longer 6 weeks. It's 4 weeks. And I said 6 yesterday. It is not 6 weeks. If Sam Cosmi is on the PUP list to start the season off, he has to miss the first 4 games. And Dan Quinn said that is the thing that we have to determine. Like he said, in about a month's time, they'll know where Cosmi is. He said, look, Cosmi is making exceptional leaps and bounds. Like he's doing positional work right now. So he's kind of ahead of schedule. But keep in mind, Cosmi had surgery 6 months ago. I mean, this is incredible that we're even having this conversation. But in my mind, when he had the injury, ACLs are a 6-month injury, but this is a 300-pound guy we're talking about. So you might want to add a few more months on there. And as someone said to me, I think it was my guy, Derek B. Shout out to my guy, Derek B. He was like, it's one thing to be moving around at 300 pounds on a repaired ACL. It's another thing to carry your 300 pounds and then have to stop another 300-pound man from, trying to get to your quarterback or your running back. So putting that force on your body and your ACL. And that's true. And they're going to test all of that out. Again, as DQ says, they're not going to miss any steps. But the fact that he's already doing this 6 months removed from the injury speaks to his work ethic, speaks to him being young and him putting in the work. And they talked about him putting in the work all offseason in the rehab department. And now we're seeing him get to a point where you can't rule him out for week 1. And DQ said they're going to figure out in about a month where he is, and they're going to make a determination as to whether to make him active to start the season off. So he may not be your starter week 1. But what that said, if they don't put him on the PUP list to start, that means they think he's going to be ready before week 5. Because if they would have put him on the PUP list, he would have been out until week 5 at a bare minimum. But if they think he can be back by week 3, just missed the first 2 games, they're not putting him on the PUP list. So all I'm telling you is I'm still all in for week 1, but I'm just telling you, I don't think Sam Cosmi's starting this season on the PUP list. I don't think he's starting this season on the PUP list. And then DQ finished his press conference talking about Marshawn Lattimore, essentially his acclimation this year versus last year. He's like, he didn't have much of a runway. Last year was kind of a mucky situation because he got here, he was injured, so he couldn't really do the things that they needed him to do to get, where they needed him to be. They kind of just threw him in the fire, right? Once he was healthy, kind of just threw him out there because they needed him. We were so desperate for help at the cornerback position last year. And he never really got fully healthy. He never really was himself. So this year, he said I could see it immediately when he came from mandatory minis. He's a different guy. He's healthy. He's driving on the football. He's doing some of the things that, we felt like he would be able to do here in Washington. And so, again, he's a part of why I feel like the cornerback group in particular is going to be so good this season. So, let's go to Brandon Coleman. We'll save Von Miller for last today. Brandon Coleman spoke for just a bit under 8 minutes. It was 7 minutes, maybe just over 7 minutes or so. He talked about learning how to conduct himself in the offseason. So he said that's really going to help him for next year. This was his first NFL offseason. So he's like, I was still kind of figuring out, what I needed to do, how I needed to go about things. He says, like, I got it now. I've experienced it. So next year, next offseason, I'll be prepared. He said he's also helping the rookies. It sounds so crazy to hear a second-year guy talk about helping the rookies. But when he started to talk, and first of all, Brandon Coleman expresses himself very well. He speaks exquisitely. So he's another one of those guys that you can go to and you'll get a very well thought out and well conveyed answer if you ask him a question. So he talked about helping the rookies, and I'm like, bro, you were just a rookie last year. But he was like, I can tell these guys if, where to go if you want something to eat, what to do, how to condition your bodies, making that transition from college to the NFL, what to expect from the meeting rooms, what a day looks like during the season. Those are the things that I can help. I'm like, okay, that all makes sense. He's like, I was just in their position last year. It's all fresh in my mind. I can help them. And I've been, going to like Josh Connolly, and, anytime he asks me, I'm telling him, hey, this is what, worked for me last year. And so I said, that's pretty cool. That's the environment that DQ has cultivated, right? Working inside and making the adjustment. He talked about that, and he kind of talked about, hey, look, I did this at TCU, so it's not a big deal, right? It's just reteaching my body, the muscle memory of doing it. He said, been playing tackle, and so you get used to those movements. Now I have to readjust and reacclimate myself to playing inside, but I did it before. He says, like riding a bike. I just got to reteach myself, the movements. That's it. But I know how to do it. And he said it helps when you're going up against guys like, Daron Payne and Javon Kinlaw and Dorrance Armstrong. When they kick him inside, it really helps my process of getting better. And then he talked about an example of going up against those guys and how it's making him a better player. He was like, so there was a rep in day one of practice where the D-line was trying to get into their run fits, and Javon Kinlaw beat him to the spot across his face. And Coleman was like, what did you see? Like, how did you, get to that spot so quickly? What's something I can do to combat that? And he was able to talk to him. He made the adjustment today. He was better, right? So those are the things that you want to hear. And this is the time for all of that, right? He talked about working on his pad level. That was something that I complained about last year. His pad level. It wasn't ideal, all the time. He plays high. That was one of the knocks on him coming out of TCU, is he plays high. And it got the best of him at times last year. But he said that was something that he intentionally worked on this offseason. He said, obviously, there are no pads on right now, so he hasn't been able to really put all of that to the work that he's put in necessarily to use yet. Obviously, there are certain technical aspects of it that you can rep every day, pads or no pads. But he's like, I really want to see the work that I put in reveal itself, and that'll happen when the pads go on. So I'm looking forward to seeing if that's something that, he's like, hey, but he talked about his helmet being lower than the helmet of the guy he's blocking. So he talked about working alongside Tyler Biadasz. He's like, yeah, man, that's my guy. We were working with each other in Texas. So apparently Tyler Biadasz had all those dudes come out to Texas and work with him over the spring. So they've gotten some work in. He's really comfortable working alongside Biadasz. He's getting comfortable working with Laramie Tunzel. And I think this is going to be a really good transition for him. I really do. He talked about Josh Connolly Jr. and he's like, man, this guy's a sponge. He's so smart that he knows a lot of ball already coming in. He's like, I'm giving him, tips here and there, but this dude's sharp. And, I think he's going to be a really good addition to the offensive line is basically what he said. He talked about the speed of the game. And he said it really started to slow down for him at the end of last season. He's like, it was really fast last year when he was a rookie. And he said, the biggest difference this year is going inside. That defensive lineman is right up on top of you. Like, as soon as they snap the ball, it's hand-to-hand combat. You in a wrestling match immediately, right? Whereas when you're a tackle, there's a lead up, right? You get out of your stance, and that guy has to run the arc to get to you. And so you've got about a good 2 seconds before you really engage, a second before you engage. It's the fraction of a second. When that ball snapped, and Cosme literally talked about this 2 years ago, the biggest difference from playing tackle to kicking inside the guard is he's like, at tackle, you've got a little bit of time to prep yourself to prepare for contact, right? You have to be more patient, is what he said. At guard, it's immediate. That ball snapped, and it's violence now, right? You got to be ready. And that's essentially what Brandon Coleman said, is like the speed of the game enhances just a bit more inside but he said, I've already played guard before, so it's not like this, brand new experience that, is totally blowing my mind. It's like, I just got to readjust to that, right? And then I just love Brandon Coleman because he's self-aware. Like, he had an answer at the end of his press conference, and he was talking about his stance being too wide last year. And that's something that he had worked on throughout the course of the year, getting better at it. Because that's something that I knocked him for very early last season during the season. Like, his stance is too wide. That's where you get yourself into trouble. When you don't have when your base isn't great, that's the first step of you losing a rep, right? But him talking about his pad level, him talking about wide base, these are all things he needed to work on. And I just love the self-awareness to be able to say, yeah, no, I need to work on these things to get better, to be the best version of Brandon Coleman. That's why I think he got his chance to get better, right? To really, really get, I think he has a chance to really be the best version of himself at guard. I think that's where he was made to be in the NFL. So that was Brandon Coleman. Von Miller. So Von did not practice today. We talked about that already. He started off his press conference calling us the Washington Redskins. So I got a nice chuckle out of that, right? He showed his age there, because no young guy is going to call us the Redskins because they don't know us as the Redskins. Okay. So you have to be of a certain age to have Redskins pretty much etched into your brain to where you can't consciously remember that we're the Commanders. And I don't even call that a Freudian slip. He just said it and he never corrected himself. It's still Redskins to him in his mind. It's a lot of people that are like that. You get a lot of the old time guys that call games that slip up every now and again and call us Redskins because that's how they know us. You won't get a lot of the young guys doing it because they don't know us as the Redskins. They know us as the Commanders. So it was funny to hear him say Redskins, and there was no hesitation with that. He's like, I got the call from the Redskins about a month ago or so. We had been talking. I was like, hey, go ahead. So that was funny. But he talked about the intentionality of coming to Washington. And he spoke about this on the Next Man Up show with Brian, what's his face, Jr., right? He talked about that with him on the Next Man Up show and how he intentionally came to Washington, and he even said pretty much the same quote that he used. Like, I can't just go from Josh Allen to just anybody. Like, I played with Peyton Manning, won a Super Bowl with Peyton Manning. I played with Matthew Stafford, won a Super Bowl with Matthew Stafford. I went to Buffalo with the intent on winning the Super Bowl with Josh Allen. It didn't work out, but I can't just go from Josh Allen to just anybody. So thank you, Brian Colbert Jr. Can't just go from Josh Allen to just anybody. So part of the allure to coming to Washington was playing with Jaden Daniels. He's like, it's a really good team. Like, I was in the AFC Championship game last year. They were in the NFC Championship game last year. So I feel like I jumped from one championship caliber team to another Super Bowl contender. Again, he didn't say that. He insinuated that. And it just feels good to know that is now the aura that is around this team. Feels good, feels good. He talked about his role on the team. And this is the Von Miller quotable of the day. Quote, I can roll out of my bed in my house shoes and rush the passer. All right. Close quote. So he said, look, they brought me here to go to bag quarterbacks, basically. Like, I can still stop the run. I can do all those things, but they brought me here to go get the quarterback. They ain't bring me here to set a physical edge. That's why they got Dietrich Wise. That's why Clelin Ferrell is still here, right? They didn't bring me here to set a physical edge in the run game. They brought me here to go and get the opposing team's quarterback in critical situations. John Keim said that in practice yesterday, when he would do reps one-on-one, they would play Enter the Sandman, which is what they used to play for the greatest closer I've ever seen in my life, Mariano Rivera, who was the closer for the Yankees throughout the 90s and the early 2000s. They would play Enter Sandman anytime he came to the game because it was over, right? He'd come in, oftentimes 9-10 pitches, and the game was over. And they view Von Miller as that for us, a closer, something that we lacked last season. So for him to be like, yo, look, I know what my role is. They brought me here to go bag quarterbacks. He's like, look, even at 35, I can roll out of my bed in my house shoes and rush the quarterback. So rush the passer is what he said. That's the athletic arrogance that I talk about. You got to have to be at the level that Von Miller has been at for as long as he's been at that level. That's the athletic arrogance. I've always said that guys like him, they're always the last to know that they can't do it at the level that they once did it at. Because in their minds, they can still do it at that level. The beauty with Von is, and we'll talk about that, is he's acknowledged that I'm not the same dude I once was. But that don't mean I still can't get busy, though. Don't get it twisted. And so I'll talk to you about the answer that let me know mentally he's where we need him to be. He talked about why he wanted to play for DQ and his relationship with Adam Peters as well. So he's like, DQ, he says, he's like a guy that I felt like I knew for a long time, and I only met him 2 months ago. But it feels like I met him 20 years ago because he's that good of a dude. And one of the things DQ always does is he makes everybody feel like family. I mean, I can't look. I don't know what other teams do. I'm not watching close enough to be able to tell you how the Baltimore Ravens welcome in a brand new addition to their team. I can't tell you what the Packers do. I can't tell you what the Cardinals do. Can't tell you what the Eagles do. Can't tell you what the Bills do. All I can tell you is all 32 teams or the other 31 aren't welcoming in new members of the staff and players to their organization, no matter how big or small, like how we do when we got the entire organization basically waiting for you as you walk through the doors at Commanders Park. And in most instances, they're playing some music that they know you like. They greet you. You know, everybody's clapping for you as you walk in. They make you feel like the biggest thing in the world. Again, I don't know what other teams are doing. Maybe every team does that. I doubt it, though. Okay? I doubt other teams are doing that. And so DQ makes you feel at home. And he's like, you know, that's something you want to be a part of. And then he said everybody that he's talked to that played for him, that coached with him, vouched for him. It made it easy. And in his relationship with Adam Peters, he said, we go way back to when he was in Denver. He's like, he was a part of the staff in the front office that drafted me in Denver, which I talked about already. This is what I didn't know, though. He said he really sat down and had a really intimate conversation with Adam Peters 3 years ago, I think he said, at the scouting combine. He said Von said he was shadowing Brandon Beane at the time because I think Von in his second act wants to be a general manager, right? Wants to at least work as a high-level executive in the NFL front office. So he was kind of trying to shadow Brandon Beane to see what it's like to be a general manager and kind of get all the information that he could get. And at the time, Adam Peters was still with the 49ers. And so he said he sat down and he had a, really detailed conversation with Adam Peters. And, that was, a really, really big, that left a big impression on him. So when Adam Peters called him, he said a month ago or so, and talked to him about coming to Washington, he's like, it was a no-brainer, basically. So again, we got those type of guys pulling the strings here in Washington, right? Relationships all over the map. You love it. He talked about, and this is what I was referencing earlier. He said, there's a fine line between being kicked out of the league, but not leaving too early. And a lot of guys of his stature don't know when to say when, right? The league has to push them out the door. The league ejects them from their NFL seat. And as a guy with his track record and his standing in the league, you never want the league to eject you from your career. You want to go out on your own terms. I remember Warren Sapp talking about that. Like Warren Sapp said, I had 6 sacks last season. I could still play. But he said, I did a move that I used to use all the time. I knew the play the Packers were running. I'd seen it a million times with Frank Winters and Brett Favre. And so I knew what they were running. And, just 2 years ago, I would have been able to, get to that spot, blow the play up, do the thing that I've done for, over a decade. He said, I knew the play, I knew where I needed to get to, and I couldn't get there. And it was at that moment I knew I was done. He could have still played, but he couldn't face being a lesser version of himself. Not everybody thinks that way, right? There's some guys that it's sad watching them go out, man. It usually happens to boxers where you're like, man, I don't like seeing Roy Jones Jr. like this, right? Or Evander Holyfield, or some of the greats. Manny Pacquiao just had a fight. I'm like, bro, stop, Manny, stop. Right? I don't need to see you like this, bro. I don't want to remember you like this. And in football, is certain guys where you see them go out like, it was hard watching Ben Roethlisberger at the end of his career, man. That was tough, bro. Because we even seen Ben Roethlisberger do the things that he did in his career, and you're like, yeah, nah, bro, that ain't the Ben Roethlisberger I remember. It was tough, right? I mean, it's part of the reason Aaron Rodgers is like, I can't go out like that. Last year was rough. I mean, it was bad for Aaron last year, and he's like, I can't go out like that. That can't be your lasting image of me. So he don't want to, like, Tom Brady could have still played, but Tom was like, nah, it's time. It's time. I'm out. because you don't want the league to retire you. And so Von is very conscious of, I can still play, I can still help. And then you hear guys that retired maybe a little too soon, and they were like, we miss it. Don't make sure you empty the tank. Just make sure the tank is on E, that you have nothing left to give before you hang it up. Because once it's over, it's over. And it ain't nothing you can do that can replace the roar of the crowd, the adrenaline rush, being around the fellas, all that. Like, if you still got something to give, then give it. Because once it's gone, you can't get it back. So Von is like, I'm right in that sweet spot of league ain't retiring me yet. And I still got something to give, and I ain't ready to go yet. Let's hope that this year isn't the year where it's clear that it's over. That's what we're trying to avoid. He talked about age equaling experience. Same thing Bobby Wagner talked about yesterday. Age equaling experience. So many guys talk about getting older and how that benefits them. And Von talked about that as well. He talked about Ryan Kerrigan. And, that was always something people brought up. They were in the same draft in 2011, and now he's his coach. And Von talked about how Kerrigan was jacked during the draft process and how he got 6 more reps on his bench working with Ryan Kerrigan because he was so jacked when he was coming out of Purdue. And Von said it was crazy to see Kerrigan now. He lost all the weight. He looks like a different dude. And he's like, he still calls him coach, even though they're the same, age and all that stuff. So he's like, it's pretty cool seeing Kerrigan. But the thing that I took away from this was Von Miller said he came to Washington on a visit over a month ago. If nothing else tells you, because it was one of those moments when he said it, he just said it matter of fact. He was just talking. But if nothing else tells you that this building is different, is that Von Miller can come on a visit in the offseason when there is nothing going on, that when guys like Ian Rappaport, who might be on vacation, they may not be, but they are dying for something to report. We didn't even know he came on a visit. Think about how many guys go to a building and it's out immediately, whether the player itself posts on social media that they take a picture of the building, because people are all over these social media accounts now. You can't post anything without that going, viral, essentially. But to think that Von Miller visited our building over a month ago, he's like, yeah, I met Kerrigan a month ago when I came on my visit. I'm like, wait, what? You did what? You came for a visit? We didn't know about this. We don't know shit no more. I love it. We don't know nothing. If they don't want us to know about it, we don't find out. Adam Schefter don't know, right? Ian Rappaport don't know. Jeremy Fowler don't know. Don't nobody know shit about what's going on in our building. It's all speculation. It's all speculation. This man came to our facility and we didn't even know. Nobody knew. Nobody said nothing. All we heard was that Von Miller had interest from 3 or 4 teams. Clearly, we were one of them. So I just love the fact that it's different now, man. It's different now. So it was funny. This was a funny conversation, right? Vet rest days. John Keim said, I heard from someone that, you want every rep and, you don't like taking days off. So, how is it that, how are you adjusting to now all of a sudden, at, your age now, getting, vet rest days and stuff? And Von went, he started scratching his head and he looked like this and he started cheesing his ass off. He's like, hey, I don't know where you got that from, but you were misinformed, because I love me a good vet rest day. That was so funny. Von was like, I don't know where you got that from, bro, but love me a good vet rest day. So F what you heard. I treasure these days off. So Thought that was funny. He said he talked about things he's learned from the past. And I mentioned this yesterday. You know, when we talk about veteran players, you know, on the opposite side of the field, you never really think about the impact that they have on other players that aren't in their position group or on their side of the ball. So he was like, I learned so much from Peyton Manning. I learned so much from Matthew Stafford. I learned so much from Josh Allen, right? And then he started talking about pass rushers that, you know, and all those styles. He's like, I learned so much from Elvis Dumervil and in DeMarcus Ware when I was in Denver. And I learned so much from, you know, Aaron Donald when I was in, you know, LA. And so he's like, you know, you learn from all of these guys. And then he's like, one of the things that I enjoy is paying it forward, passing it on to the next guy. You know, I got a lot of knowledge and I love sharing it with these young guys. I love being around the young dudes. So I thought that was pretty cool. And that aligns with him saying the thing that he said the other day, which is, I'm the best teammate in the league. I feel like I'm the best guy at assimilating himself to a locker room in the league. Nobody's better than me. That goes hand in hand with that, right? He talked about why he chose the number 24. And he had talked about this with Brian Colbert Jr. on the Next Man Up, but he went into even more explicit detail because on the Next Man Up, he basically said, look, I only wore 3 numbers in my, 4 numbers in my career. He wore the number 5 in junior high. He wore the number 58 with the Broncos and the number 40 with the Rams and the Bills. He said, but I did wear 24 one time when I was at Texas A&M when he was him and he told us this at the presser today that he told us the origins of 24 with Next Man Up, but he said that he had a teammate in high school that ended up, getting in an accident and being paralyzed from the neck down. To honor him, they wore the number 24 because that was the number he wore in high school with them. So he said, 40 was taken, 58 was taken already. And he said, obviously 5 was taken. So he's like, I'm not a big, gotta have this number guy. It ain't that serious for me. I'm just here to rush the quarterback. So he's like, I care less about the number. But he's like, 24 was a number I wore before. Champ Bailey wore the number. He wore it here too. So I respect that. That was the guy I played with in Denver. And then he was like, also, he said that he's a massive Kobe Bryant fan. And called Kobe Bryant the greatest player of all time. And so why not 24? I said, okay, well, him and Bobby got something in common. So then that was the perfect segue because the next question was about Bobby Wagner. And he talked about the relationship that they have, mutual respect for one another. Talked about Bobby stealing he joked about him stealing some all-pro, first team all-pro votes from him over the years. He talked about being on the wrong side of some Bobby Wagner, teams. Obviously, the 2013 Super Bowl, where it was one of the most lopsided beatdowns I've ever seen. Broncos versus the Seahawks. And then he talked about watching film on him and him being one of the best open field tacklers that the game's ever seen. And so he talked about the mutual respect that exists there and how he, can't wait to work with him here in Washington. He talked about maximizing his opportunities. He's like, in Buffalo, it was a bit of a transition because they initially brought him there to be the guy, first, second, and third down. But after the whole Achilles scare that he had, they basically put him on a pitch count. Like, yeah, nah, we just want you to be a situational pass rusher. And John Kahn brought up a really good point about that. With pass rushers, you want to set guys up. You may show a guy something the first 3 quarters to set him up for the 4th quarter. And it's almost like a running back. You want to wear teams down. And so the first, second, and third quarter, you wearing them down, body blow. And then you get to that fourth quarter, and now they're exhausted, and now you're ready for the knockout punch. Well, if Von isn't playing a bunch of snaps, there's no body blow. It's just you come in and you're looking for that one shot to knock him out. And he said, look, when I come in the game, I'm coming in the game to shoot. He used the basketball analogy. I ain't coming in here to come off a screen and pass it. I'm coming in the game to shoot. Every time I get it, I'm shooting, right? I ain't coming in the game to set up offense. I ain't coming in here to set up teammates. And he didn't say that, but he insinuated, like, I'm coming in the game to rush the quarterback. I'm coming in the game to get after the quarterback. That's what they bringing me in the game to do. So he's like, I'm gonna take advantage of every opportunity I get to play. Yeah, I can't control how often I'm out there, but when I'm out there, I can control what I do when I'm out there. And then he talked about creating turnovers and big plays. And he said the biggest play in football, he thinks, is the strip sack, forced fumble, scoop, and score. And he said he hasn't had one of those in his career where he forced got to the quarterback, stripped the ball, picked it up, and ran for the touchdown. Now, he's been a part of a bunch of strip sacks that have resulted in somebody picking it up and scoring with it. But to do it all himself, he's never done that. Maybe he can do it this year. But he said that's one of the biggest plays in football. And he said quarterbacks are the worst ball handlers. They got the ball on every play, though, and they're the worst ball handlers. So he said, my job is to get to the quarterback and get the ball out of there, and I'm trying to do that as much as possible. And it's just great to have another dude with that mindset on the defense. And maybe he can help shape some of these young guys into thinking about, hey, look, man, you might get pushed around the pocket. But as you getting pushed around, if you can reach your arm out and hit the quarterback's arm, that's as good as hitting him and, getting a sack. That ball's out. That's all. Look, I don't care about hitting a quarterback, to be honest with you. I just want the ball, bro. I'd much rather a quarterback stand clean in the pocket, go to throw the ball, and a guy that's getting pushed around the pocket reaches out and hits his arm as he's throwing it, than to have a quarterback drop back and under immense pressure, gets engulfed, or he doesn't see a guy coming, free shot on him, and he gets blazed, but he doesn't fumble. I'd much rather the quarterback barely get touched, but his arm gets hit, or that ball gets hit on the way, and it's a fumble. I'd much rather that happen. Give me that every day, 10 times out of 10. So Von said, I was brought here to help, create more big plays defensively, which we know. So that was Von Miller. And that was day number 2 of Commanders training camp. Got a couple comments. We'll get to these, and then we will get out of here. Jorn, been a member for 40 months. Salute to you, Jorn. Appreciate you. Respect. Low Key Los, stand up. You are the newest member of the MOBB Mob. You know what to do. Show Low Key Los some love. Welcome him with open arms. You know what to do. So glad to have you on board. Big season on the horizon. Glad to have you as a member of the MOBB. Welcome to the squad. Low Key Los, glad to have you. Marissa Mullinex, been a member for 12 months. Congratulations on your 1 year, Annie. Who writes, Rip Hogan. Yeah, there's some mixed emotions with Hulk Hogan, man. Provided a lot of great entertainment content for the masses, myself included. Some of my fondest memories of watching wrestling included Hulk Hogan. But he also stood for a lot of things that I didn't agree with. And I also don't think he was necessarily the best human being. So there's some mixed emotions, but I never want to see somebody pass away. So, rest easy to Terry Bollea, a.k.a. Hulk Hogan. they seem like these people are just dropping like flies here, man. Good gracious. Ozzy Osbourne and Malcolm Jamal Warner and now Terry Bollea and shit. I talked about my girl, Ann Burrell from Food Network. It just feels like, you know, every day is somebody different, man. It's crazy. So Hulk Hogan gone. I think what was it, 71? I think I got that right. Red Wing 01. Thank you for being a member for 33 months. Who writes, hope you had a happy born day, Lou. Chris Moore, wide receiver 1. No. Chris Moore, not wide receiver 1, but he's taking advantage of the opportunity. That's all you can do, right? All you can do is take advantage of these opportunities. I talked about that yesterday. These receivers taking advantage of these opportunities, and with no Noah Brown, no Terry McLaurin, there are ample opportunities, way more that would exist with those guys being out of practice right now. So Chris Moore trying to take advantage of it, trying to make a claim to make this roster. I think at worst, Chris Moore is going to end up being a practice squad guy. At worst, I can't see him being on this roster still, but I do see him being a guy that they look at as a veteran. Like, you want a veteran receiver on your practice squad along with 1 or 2 developmental guys. He strikes me as a guy that they would really enjoy having on the practice squad because they think he can come in and be a veteran right away if they needed him to be. But you know, we'll see. I'm still looking at KJ Osborne, still looking at Michael Gallup, and I'm still looking at you know, guys like the rookie Ja'Cory Brooks as guys that are probably ahead of him. But you just never know. He keeps stacking good days on top of each other, but Chris Moore, wide receiver 1, that's some nasty work. Chill. KP Flex, thank you for being a member for 40 months. Salute to you. Who writes, football is back, Lou. Let's go. Not quite. It's getting there. Football is officially back for me when the Hall of Fame game takes place. We are literally a week away. This time next week, we will have an actual tackle football game featuring real guys in real uniforms playing real football. Doesn't count, but it's actual tackle football. That's when it becomes real, and that's when shit really gets started. But it's just good to be talking about these dudes being back on the field. Feels good. But that's, for me, when it really all kicks off. That Hall of Fame game is the coronation of the start of football. And as we normally say, once the Hall of Fame game takes place, there will never be another week where there is not football on the television, whether it's NFL or college. There will not be another week for the next 6 months where there isn't football. And that is where we want to be. That is where we want to be. So almost there, KP Flex, almost there. Anyway, I digress. That's going to do it for me, your man Louie T, here on Training Camp Confidential, day number 2 in the books for the Commanders. Tomorrow will feature helmets and shells. All right, so helmets, light pads. We're starting to ramp it up. Looking forward to seeing what tomorrow brings, what practice looks like, who steps up, plays being made, etc., etc. But just a quick aside, the Commander Kings are set for a show tonight at 9 p.m. So hopefully you can join us over on the Commanders Kings channel. Big announcement tonight, so make sure you are present for the Commanders Kings. We got a lot to talk about. First 2 days of camp. Terry McLaurin holdout, now in day number 2 of that holdout for Terry McLaurin. And again, among other topics to get to. So looking forward to chopping it up with the fellas. Hopefully you will be there in attendance. Until then, I'm your man, Louie T, signing off. Got a comment here, KP Flex, or just some love. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for the love, KP Flex. Thank you for the super chat. That being said, you guys have a good one. Take care. Either I'll see you tomorrow for day 3 of Training Camp Confidential. Practice is starting earlier tomorrow. It's going to be pretty hot tomorrow. So that's not going to change my schedule any. But, you know, for those of you who like to watch the press conferences live, Dan Quinn will be speaking with the media at 7:30 in the morning tomorrow because the practice has been moved up because it's supposed to be so hot. I think it's going to be 98 degrees tomorrow. So, yeah, I get it. But if you don't see me tonight with the Commanders Kings, hopefully I'll see you tomorrow for Training Camp Confidential. Either way, enjoy the rest of your day, and I'll see you next time. Peace.